Divas, they have the streak. Okay, let's go. We are on Daf Chet Amud Aleph 8a2. Gemara says as follows. Metve, you see it? 8a2. Everyone found the Gemara? Metve? The Gemara's question. Now we're going back on the question of Rabbi Yehuda. Metve. Right? Remember, see this, the Gemara mentioned Rabbi Yehuda piling the dirt in the corner and then being able to use it for whatever you want. Metve says the Gemara, koi, this is not the Japanese fish, okay? We're referring over here to a certain type of animal, all right? Koi, en shochatin oto b'yom tov. You don't do shechita on Yom Tov. Im shachato, en mechasin et damo. And if you did cover it, if you did do shechita, then en mechasin et damo, you don't cover the blood. What's it called? You don't cover the blood. V'ita lechasya k'Rav Yehuda. Of course, if the person has dirt in the corner to use for whatever he wants, so then why would the Beitzah tell you not, if you slaughtered it, not to cover the blood because of the Isur of Yom Tov? I have something available. I could use the earth. All-purpose earth, says the Gemara, and according to you, so the Gemara is saying it like if the Beitzah seems to be contradicting Rabbi Yehuda. The Gemara says, let's say according to you, that you're not allowed to use it, okay? Okay, so then there is something that we all agree that you could use, which is the ash from an oven. What are the conditions? Either from before Yom Tov, right, that was lit before Yom Tov, or if it was lit on Yom Tov, if it's still hot enough to be able to roast an egg. Or b'deker na'utz. Or what was the other opportunity we had? The first Gemara, the Gemara before that, where you dug the spade into the earth, so it's already in. Or b'deker na'utz, when you had the shovel dug into the earth. So we said already at that point, you're not making a hole. You're not all those things. You're not doing it. It's prepared.
And it was fine.
All those things were fine.
No, it was fine.
And it was exactly. The earth was not cloddy. Yeah, says the Gemara. So you're saying that it says not to cover it. Why can't you use the earth? The answer is, says the Gemara. Okay, well, forget. Let's say you're not allowed to use it. There's a bunch of other things you could have covered it with. So why did the Mishnah say anyway you don't cover it? You could have covered it with the efer kira, with those conditions. You could have covered it with the deker nautz, with the spade inserted to the ground. Says the Gemara. The answer is, why didn't it say those things? Because you didn't have them. Hacha also nami deletle. You can't prove from here that you can't use the all-purpose earth if you had it. Maybe you don't have it. And the reason why we said you don't cover it with anything is we're talking about when you didn't have something handy that was allowed to cover with, and the question was whether you could start from scratch, and that the Beitzah was saying no. Okay, the Gemara answers, so therefore there's no proof against Rabbi Yehuda. All right, Ihachi says the Gemara. Hold on, if that's true, and we just said about you're talking about when it's referring to cases where you don't have, so therefore you can't deduce anything from the Mishnah saying you don't cover it. Why are we talking about a situation of a safek? Koi is an animal, which is a safek. We don't know if that you're chayav to cover it or not. And since it's a safek, we said this case. Afilu v'adayin amilo. Let's say I had an animal that 100% has an obligation of covering. So it's wild in all of its forms. In other words, remember we said this before? You have an animal that's domesticated, you don't cover it. An animal that's wild, you have a hayuv to cover. Koi is an animal, I'm not sure if it's this or this. It's an animal that's half-half, okay? So the question was, says the Mishnah, if you don't have, you would cover it. If you don't, but on the Yom Tov, you don't cover it, right? That's what we said. It's the Gemara, if we're talking about a case where you don't have, why you tell me dafka, an animal, which is a safek chaya, safek behema, even if it was not a safek, afilu v'adayin amilo. You can't cover it. Why? Because you have none of the available mutar ways to cover it. Right? You got it? Since we just said that the Mishnah is talking about a scenario where you don't have deker nautz, you don't have the spade, and you don't have, what's it called? You don't have the ash. So what do I have? All I have is asur ways of covering it. So if all I have is asur ways of covering it, even if it's a vadai behema, I still wouldn't cover it. Because I don't have a heter way of doing it. Remember we said, the Mishnah in Bet Shammai, even Bet Shammai agrees, deker nautz. That's how we learn the Gemara, according to that opinion.
But if it's wild, you have to cover it.
No. Yes, you do have to cover it, but you're not allowed to cover it. Because since you don't have any prepared way, only way to do it would be to dig it fresh, so you don't do it. That's the point. But now that I slaughtered it, ready. So the Gemara is asking, according to you, that Mishnah is true about a vadai behema. You don't have to come up with a koi case. Right? Don't be koi. Okay. Says the Gemara. Lo mibaya kama. The Gemara is saying as a lo mibaya, which means not only. Now this is a very interesting item over here. The Gemara identifies that the Mishnah talks in very different ways.
What's an example of an animal like that we would know?
Maybe a bison.
Okay.
So bison are wild, but they also grow. People have bison farms.
Okay.
So as an example would be a bison.
Like that. Okay.
Yeah. But you have other things like that also, yeah. Like as an example, a mountain goat. Mm-hmm. Mountain goats are definitively wild, right? Yeah. But what if a guy owns a mountainous range and he raises mountain goats? Now, and now he's already, so something along those lines, but he's domesticated an animal. That's like a quasi, all right? Anyway, it says the Gemara like this. Lo mebaya kama. So I was saying that the Gemara identifies ways in which the Mishnah speaks. Okay, so let me give you an example. Let's say the Mishnah says, this guy, Hidush, this guy did not come to the class. And also, this guy did not come to the class. The first guy, Mr. A, comes to the class always. This is the first time he ever missed. The second guy never ever comes to the class. So what are we saying when we say Mr. Always and Mr. Never came to the class? The style of the Mishnah is to say
the level of each
is a starting with a bigger chidush and going down to a lower chidush. That's called zu ve'en tzarich lomar zu. There was so much snow tomorrow that not only did Joey and Jack not come, also this other guy who never came one time live, he lives on Zoom. Okay, that's what we call zu. This one, ve'en tzarich lomar zu. I don't even need to say that one. So that's a descending order of chidush. The flip version of the Mishnah's parlance is zu, lo zu, af zu.
The guy who never comes.
Guy who never comes, and then I move to the bigger chidush. So in other words, the weather was so good, right, that this guy didn't come. The guy who never comes should have come. He should have come. But now he didn't come. Even the guys who come always don't come. That's lozu afzu, okay? Now, the reason why that's important is because sometimes we'll learn out a halacha from the way the Mishnah is structuring the cases that it's listing. It's going from this to this, or that sounds like that's a bigger chidush. Lozu afzu. Gemara will say, no, maybe zu ve'en tzarich lomar zu. So sometimes the Mishnah talks up, sometimes the Mishnah talks down. Okay. Says the Gemara is identify exactly that. Lo mibaya ka'amar. The Gemara is saying that the Mishnah is saying a not only. What does not only mean? Lo mibaya vadai de lo lishchot. Not only should you not slaughter a 1000% wild animal because there the chiyuv is of the highest order, right? Avas safek, but a safek, a maybe, which anyway, covering the blood is in doubt, so maybe I'd be kosher to slaughter it on Yom Tov. Ema mishum simchat Yom Tov lishchot velo lechasyeh. Maybe the other guy's not going to have meat otherwise. For the sake of the mitzvah of simchat Yom Tov, maybe I'll tell you slaughter the safek animal because it's safek if you have to cover it anyway. So go for it. Slaughter that kind of animal on Yom Tov. Kamash malan, we learn that even the animal that's a safek, we tell you, ideally, don't slaughter it on Yom Tov because we want you covering it from safek on Yom Tov. So therefore the Mishnah says, don't slaughter the koi, right? And if you slaughtered it, don't cover it. What would the halacha be for a vadai animal? Exactly the same. Just Mishnah is giving you a bigger chidush. But here's the catch, watch this. The first part of the Mishnah, the Resha is saying, don't slaughter it if you don't have. If you're not ready, don't slaughter it. Second part of the Mishnah is saying, and if you slaughtered it, don't cover it. Right? So it's interesting. Where you choose, the way you see the Mishnah is going to depend where the major hidush is of the Mishnah. So as an example.
And they're telling you not to cover it because they don't want you to do a melaka on a safek.
The Gemara is saying, we're talking about a case of enlo. So you have to do a melacha to cover it. So the Gemara is saying, why do you tell me the case is by that halacha would be the same even by vadai? Answers the Gemara, you're right. But we want to tell you a bigger chidush. What's the bigger chidush? Not that you don't cover it afterwards. That's a lesser chidush by a safek. The chidush is that if you're beforehand, we tell you not to slaughter it lechatechila. In the first place. If we're talking about a vadai, what's the bigger chidush? The second part. If you're talking about a safek, what's the bigger chidush? First part. You see? So how are you going to study it? I'm melting. Is going to be the question of the Gemara. Okay, says the Gemara.
So, is there a situation where you're on Yom Tov and you don't have meat,
Yeah.
but you need?
You're on Yom Tov and you don't have meat. What should you do?
You're supposed to eat meat.
You know what the answer is? You go.
You can't do it the right way. You're not supposed to eat meat.
For sure not.
Okay.
For sure
Better
not.
not to have meat.
Better not to
Have
have
the
meat.
meat the wrong way.
Yeah, exactly. So as an example,
Unless you have to use the stuff.
that holiday, you go without meat.
Okay. So
Yeah.
it's not ideal, but it's okay.
Not ideal. You didn't do the mitzvah of Simchat Yom Tov, but yeah, okay. Says the Gemara. Okay. Yeah. Midakatani Sefa, says the Gemara, exactly my point that we just raised. When you read the end of the Mishnah, what's the end of the Mishnah? And if you slaughtered it already, then what? Don't cover it. Midakatani Sefa, v'imshachato en mechasin et damo michlal. What does that tell you? If you already slaughtered it, don't cover. Diresha be'deit le'askinan. It turns out that you do have something to cover it. Why would the Mishnah tell you en mechasin et damo, right? You don't cover the blood, which again is not specifically by a safek, it's even by a vadai, right? So it must be that you're talking about a scenario where you had something to cover it, right? You understand? Is that clear to everybody? If the Sefa says, V'im shachato en mechasin et damo, and now you're telling me we're talking about a safek, right? What does that tell you? Michlal, b'di'it le'askinan. What the limud is, it has to be that you're talking about where you have something to cover. Because if you do not have something to cover, you don't need to tell me the halacha by a koi. You can tell me the halacha by a vadai. So I slaughtered a vadai chaya. I did not have prepared earth. I'm not allowed to cover it, like our Mishnah. So the Gemara seems to say that in the Resha it works. In the Sefa it doesn't work because it's less of a chidush. Right? You got what I was saying?
So it doesn't matter that you have something prepared for it. You're not supposed, if it's a koi.
No,
It doesn't matter if you have prepared.
Not cover it.
If you have prepared, you can and you should. If you don't have prepared, you shouldn't. Ask the Gemara, then why are you talking about a safek? It's true even about a vadai. Right. Answers the Gemara, well, I told you about safek because I wanted to give you the bigger chidush that you're not allowed to slaughter it in the first place. The Gemara says very nice for the Resha, but in the Sefa it's a bigger chidush to tell me vadai. So it must be that you had something to cover it with. And what you're telling me is that you still don't cover it. And if it's telling me that you still don't cover it, and that's why I had to go with the koi. Because if it was a vadai, you would cover it. It's a higher level, you would cover it. So it must be that the reason why I'm not covering is because it's hafek. What could be the case where I have something and I'm not using it? Must be the case of Rabbi Yehuda. I have the all-purpose sand and I'm not allowed to use it. Must be that that's what the Mishnah is teaching me, and that's why it talked about the case of safek. Answers the Gemara. So we now need to come up with another answer to this Mishnah. Ela Amar Rabba. Rabba says, no. We're talking over here, Efekira Mukhan Levadai Ve'en Mukhan Lesafek. The answer is, I have ash from the oven. But this concept of it being Mukhan is only Mukhan for something which is an absolute use. When you're talking about something which is not a chiyuv, like a safek animal or wild animal, okay? That case, efer kira, the ash is not considered prepared. Now, this is a massive chidush, okay? Take a look over here at Rashi. Rashi says, mukhan levadai ve'en mukhan lesafek. You see it over here? It's right here. 4 lines in the narrow lines in Rashi. Mukhan levadai. You see that? 4 lines into the narrow lines. Okay? Mukhan levadai ve'mukhan lesafek. Kasal kadaitach, I would have thought, this is what it means to say. Af al gav de da'ate lechol mili, even though your intention is for all things, hachnasato mo'elet levadai ve'ena mo'elet lesafek. It works for something which is a sure obligation, not a safek obligation. Now, where are we coming from? The Gemara says, if we go from Efer Kira, right? So we're saying that Efer Kira, the halacha is that it's only usable in this way for vadai needs. So it's not really all purpose, your sand. Your sand is most purpose sand. It works for vadai. And anything else, it's considered mukseh. So therefore, says the Gemara, when you're talking about a koi is a safek, therefore you do not have an obligation to cover it. So in that case, you would not be allowed to cover it. But a chaya, if you, which does have an obligation to cover, a wild animal, you would be able to cover it with the efer kira, with the ash from the oven. Okay? Says the Gemara, l'safek mai ta'amalo. Why? And the reason, what would the reason be that you're not allowed to use it for safek? The Gemara says, the ka'avid guma. You're telling me that it's because you're making a hole? Now, what's the hole over here that we're making? Right? We're talking about ash. It's not. There's no hole in the ash. You know. So obviously, it means that you're scooping out the ash. Now there's like a hole in the ash. But that's a very strange idea. Why would we say that there's ash there? For whatever reason, the Gemara assumes that there might be a problem with making a hole in the ash. The Gemara says, "The ka'avid guma." You think that that's the reason because you made a hole? Vadai nami ka'avid guma. When you did it for a vadai, for the non-domesticated animal, you also made a hole. So if it's a problem for one, it's a problem for the other.
Purpose. You're making a hole for a purpose.
Even if the Gemara said, why should I not be allowed to use it for a safek? The answer is because it's a guma. Right. If it's a guma is a problem even for a vadai. The Gemara says, so that's not the reason. Ela kid Rabbi Abba. The reason why it's forbidden is according to Rabbi Abba. What is Rabbi Abba holding? Rabbi Abba says that if a person is digging a hole, ve'eno tzarich ela le'afra. Remember, I only need the dirt. I don't need the hole. There we said that the halacha is that's not a biblical isur, because the biblical isur is when I need the hole. Then I dug a hole, I built something. Okay, I made something. I made a storage unit. Remember, today when you dig a hole in the ground, you're making a pothole. Back then, that's where they stored their cheese. They didn't go to IKEA, they dug a hole. You need room for your shoes? No problem. Give me the shovel. Okay? So, Hachanami k'di Rabbi Abba. Also over here, says the Gemara, it's not a problem according to Rabbi Abba. Rabbi Abba says that if you dig a hole and you don't need the hole, you just need the earth in it. My intention is not to make a hole. So then, what is my hole? My hole is damage. My hole is not storage. I didn't build anything. I just took earth. So therefore, says the Gemara, Hachanami ki Rabbi Abba. So it's going according to Rabbi Abba, then there's no whole issue. So the whole issue is down the okay. Says the Gemara. So what could be the reason why safek would be allowed in the afar in the esh and not vadai? The Gemara says ela. You got it? Ela safek maitama. What would the safek be? Dilma avid ktisha. Maybe the reason why you're not allowed to take. We're going to go now back all the way to the beginning. Maybe the reason why you can't cover it when it's a safek is because we're worried that you might smash up the earth on top of it. And here, right, when it's safek, I don't want you doing that in case, because it's only a safek. When it's not a safek, so if the guy pulled up earth that's smashed and there's a clot in it, it's okay if he does it because it's a chiyuv. So the chiyuv trumps the maybe. But when it's a maybe in the first place, if I have to cover it, so then in that case, maybe I shouldn't do it. Gemara says, "Vaday namen igzor mishum k'tisha." So if you're worried about it for the safek, worry about it for the vaday. The Gemara says, "Vaday ki ka'avid k'tisha, ate aseh v'dachi ate et lo ta'aseh." At least when I have a chaya, which is obligated from the Torah to cover its blood, so then I dug up this hole in the soft earth, and I put it on top, and there's a clod there. If the guy winds up smashing it, so at least I have a mitzvat aseh from the Torah, a positive commandment that's counteracting the negative commandment.
So all this is based on the fact.
Hold on, I just want to, right? We're now in a maybe. Remember, what do we say? Maybe you'll come to crush it, to smash it. What maybe? What's the maybe over here? At least at this point in the Gemara. If it's hard earth, then there's only kitisha, because you didn't cover it. If it's soft earth, where's the kitisha? So we're talking about a scenario where the guy thinks that it's soft earth, but it might be that there's clods in it. Okay? So it's a maybe. The Gemara is now going to ask, 1 second. Right? This is one of the biggest sugyot in the whole of Shas. Are you telling me? Yeah? Are you saying ati aseh v'dachit lo ta'aseh, that an aseh, a positive commandment, just takes a negative commandment, wipes it out? That so long as I'm doing a mitzvah, I could just not worry about the fact that in order to do that mitzvah, I'm going to have to break a negative mitzvah. Kegon milah betzarat, inami sadin b'tzitzit. Are you telling me that, what's it called? When I say a positive commandment undoes a negative commandment, is milah betzarat. What's the case? Guy has tzarat on his arm. What's the halacha? You're not allowed to cut it off. Let's say the guy, listen, I have a big day coming up. I'm not dealing with this COVID level, sequestering, isolation. I'm not doing that. You know what? Honey, get me a scalpel. Cut it right off. You're not allowed to do that. Right. So it's asur from the Torah to cut off tzarat. What happens if the guy has tzarat? Unlucky Dave over here has tzarat right at the end of his manhood. When is he doing Brit Milah? Right at the end of his manhood. So could a person do Milah b'tzarat? Positive commandment, do Milah. Negative commandment, don't cut off.
No.
This is the question. Second case. Sadin b'tzitzit. Let's say I have a linen garment with 4 corners. I have wool strings on this linen garment. So I put it on, I get the mitzvah of tzitzit. The second I put it on, I'm being over, I'm transgressing. Shatnez is wool and linen together. So Gemara says, I know that there is an idea of a positive commandment knocking off a negative commandment. But that's only in cases like those. That in the second I'm doing the negative commandment, I'm simultaneously also doing the positive one. Hacha over here, be'idna dikame'aker lav lo mokim aseh. What happens when I'm taking the earth and I have now a clod. I'm smashing the clod. In the second I smash it, I fulfill the negative commandment. Afterwards, I have to then cover the blood with what came out of my smashed clod of earth. So it's not simultaneous. So we never said that the answer of a positive commandment undoing a negative commandment unless it happened in the exact same time. Got it? So you can't answer me that the reason for the Mishnah is a positive commandment undoing a negative commandment. So far away. I just want to make sure we landed.
We got it.
A negative.
When we say that a positive trumps a negative, that's only when it's simultaneous. Here it's not simultaneous. You can't even bring that as a maybe. There's not even a question. Nobody argues about a non-simultaneous aseh pushing off a lo ta'aseh. Wait, everyone got that?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Questions?
Aren't we under the assumption that he slaughtered the animal on Yom Tov? That he wasn't supposed to do it on Yom Tov?
Yeah.
And then all this other stuff that we're adding is now to make it okay to eat the animal on Yom Tov. But we started
You shouldn't
with...
have done it in the
No, we started... Right, this is only if he slaughtered it already and we have to make it good. That's what we said, right?
The covering of the blood doesn't make the food kosher. It's a second question.
No, you see what I'm saying?
I didn't understand the question.
So we said a lot of... The thing was, it's already... He slaughtered the animal already. Now...
No, don't slaughter the animal. Right. If you slaughter the animal, don't cover it. Right. Answers the Gemara, that's only koi. But if it was a real chaya, then you would cover it. Okay. Ask the Gemara, why would you cover it? Answers the Gemara, because it was a safek gezerah. Maybe you'll come to crush the clods. Answers the Gemara on that. 1 second. If it's a maybe you crush the clods, and that's why only vadai, but not safek. Yes. Gemara says, well, even the vadai should not be allowed.
Well, why are you separating the act of not supposed to doing the slaughter? First of all,
I'm not. That's still the case. You still should not do it lechatechila.
Isn't that override?
That stands. You still should not do it lechatechila. But now that I did it, do I cover it? Yes or no? And it's clear from the Mishnah that we're differentiating between safek and vadai, indicating that vadai you would cover. The Gemara says 1 second. Why would you cover? Answers the Gemara. I said lo ta'aseh. Ask the Gemara, but it's not the same time. By the way, I have my own question. Nobody asked me yet.
What? Your own question.
It's all about doing the wrong thing.
I still wanted to ask.
And the wrong thing's done. Now figuring out a way to make
cover
it
the
right.
blood tomorrow on whole? Are you making up for it
No.
by covering
No.
tomorrow?
No. By the time tomorrow comes around, the blood's already absorbed in the ground.
So it doesn't absolve you retroactively?
No.
I can see it.
So 1 second. The Gemara's next point, I think everyone could get.
I don't see why the
Which
rabbi...
is, don't cover it.
No, we said it's not at the same time because first I'm crushing the clods, and then I'm covering it with whatever was left. Answers the Gemara, Halo kasha. He's putting the clod on the blood. When he smashes it with the shovel, the second it crushes, it covers.
Okay, in the blood.
So there's no pause.
It goes from a mixture to a compound.
Sorry?
It's already...
No, the mitzvah is not absorbing. The mitzvah is covering. Problem is a clod doesn't cover. The Gemara answers, okay, so you're going to smash it. The Gemara says, no, but there's first smashing it and then there's covering it. It's the Gemara, okay, so we'll talk about a case where I put the clod on I didn't smash it over here and then move it. I put it on the blood as a clod. Smash it, and then in 1 second, it smashes and it covers. So then it's the same time. So then I have aseh, lo ta'aseh, at the same time.
But you could see a rabbi saying, with all this saying, just don't slaughter on Yom Tov, end of the conversations. There's no way to do it after, there's no way to cover it after, it doesn't matter if you cover it after.
That is what we said. We said don't slaughter. But now I forgot. Okay, so there's all separate halakha. No, there's no such thing. There's no such thing. Now that I did the thing, what's the halakha now? So in other words, I don't want you doing something which is b'di'evet, but now I have to deal with the fact that we are where we are. And now there's separate halacha discussions that we need to have.
Okay, so versus wasting the slaughter, wasting it, not using it?
No,
Why would
even
that be a thing?
even if I did not cover it, it would not waste. It doesn't make the korban not kosher. The shechita not kosher. Let's say you have a guy who, for whatever reason, didn't cover the blood. His food is still kosher.
Okay.
The question, he made an avon that he didn't cover the blood like the Torah says. Okay, but the avon is. Let's say, as an example, I did shechita, and at the moment I did shechita, I was wearing a wool and linen tzitzit. Nothing to do with each other. You see, that's the point. Okay, so the Gemara said, I thought that the vadai of the animal being mitzvah to cover, mitzvah from the Torah, would allow me to push away the lo ta'aseh of kitisha. On that, the Gemara said, it's not at the same time. Answer the Gemara, no. I have a case where it's at the same time. You put the clod on the dirt, on the blood, before you smashed it, and then you smashed it, so the smashing and the covering happen
It's
simultaneously.
so remote, so why can't you default to not covering it?
What do you mean it's so remote?
The possibility of it happening.
No, it's not remote at all. Every guy has a shovel, and there's plenty of earth in the world.
Okay.
So I slaughtered my animal right over here on my farm.
Yeah.
How's that remote?
You need dirt.
I have a shovel and I have dirt.
You need dirt.
Okay. The simultaneous act.
No, it's not. No, it's not. The only thing that makes it a hadush is if I put the clod on my dining room table, smashed it, moved it back to the blood, then it's separate. But if I put the clod, I dug a hole on the shovel itself, I put it on the blood. So then the smash is the
It's
cover,
not a sin. Then there's no avirah there.
right? Now I don't know. There is
Simultaneous.
it's a simultaneous
Simultaneous.
pushing
There's
off
another rule,
of positive
another
of the
angle-
negative.
The angle around it works, right?
Yeah, Gemara.
Bring me along Shabbat.
Bri Milah and Shabbat is not the same. You know why? No, you know why? Because the Torah says, B'yom hashemini yimo b'sar latov. Whatever the 8th day is, so here, in the Pasuk itself, the Pasuk says that that's what you should do. Here, we don't have that Pasuk. There's no Pasuk that says, and when you slaughtered the animal, we told you not to slaughter. When you slaughtered the animal, this is how you could do it. We don't have an exemption from the Torah. So we're learning an exemption from this halakha of aseh doche lo ta'aseh. On that the Gemara says, so then there's rules for when you could administer this idea of a positive commandment pushing off a negative commandment. Okay? Says the Gemara, sof sof yom tov aseh velo ta'asehu. Gemara says, sorry, wah, 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 wah. Yom tov is not only a negative commandment that you could have a positive push off a negative. Yom tov is a positive and a negative commandment. It's a twofer. It's a bogo. Okay? The en aseh and a positive mitzvah covering the blood can push off et lo ta'aseh ve'aseh, a scenario where you have a negative and a positive commandment. What's the negative and the positive commandment of the Gemara? Dichtiv, like see Rashi. Rashi says right over here, aseh v'lo ta'aseh, about 10 lines up in the narrows. Aseh v'lo ta'aseh hu dichtiv biyom harishon Shabbaton, on the first day of Yom Tov. Shabbaton, there's an obligation to rest from melacha. So you see that you have an obligation to not do melacha. So one thing is you shouldn't break the Yom Tov. The other thing is you have an obligation of shvita. So there's a positive commandment of rest, and there's a negative commandment of not doing melacha. So it's not a positive pushing off a negative, it's a positive pushing off a positive and a negative. And that we don't say, we never said. Okay?
You mean taking the no melacha is also a resting?
No, this is about how did the Torah tell you to do it.
Right.
Right? Like as an example, the Torah says, lo ta'aseh melacha. That's don't make melacha. Negative. Then the Torah says, Shabbaton, you should rest.
Oh, so separate two items.
So the positive commandment of resting, you're obligated to rest. You're obligated not to do melacha. So I have a positive and a negative. So whenever you have a positive and a negative, the positive can't come along and override the positive and the negative. Right? So the Gemara says, so that can't be the answer as to why you would cover the blood of a vadai, but not a safek. Good?
Wait, by resting, you're not working.
That's true. But the Torah gave you a positive instruction and a negative one. So every time, hold on. Let's say I did the Isur on Shabbat Yom Tov.
Okay.
What did I get in Shamayim? I did the Melacha. And the negative. Yeah, it's a double whammy, exactly. So says the Gemara, since Yom Tov is a double whammy, this can't be a good answer. Okay? So your clod smashing ways are both a positive and a negative commandment, and therefore it doesn't help enough. It's not enough that there's a positive commandment of covering the blood. Says the Gemara, we're now back to where we were before, that even a vadai, you can't cover. So why did Mishnah say, koi? Okay? Gemara answers, Ela amar Rava. Rava answers, Efer kira da'ato levadai, ve'en da'ato lesafek. When it comes to Efer kira, the person only has in mind to use it for certain needs, but not for safek needs. Okay, this we already said this earlier with regards to Rava. And Rava goes according to this idea that we're talking about a scenario where you had the ash in the oven, but the ash in the oven is only considered usable for a vadai need and not for a safek need. So therefore it's muktzeh, and that's the answer over here as well with Rabbi Yehuda. When you have all-purpose flour, all-purpose sand in the corner, it's only set aside for sure obligations, but not for maybe obligations. Okay, and Rava is going according to his own opinion. All right. Where are we? Okay, yeah. Dama Rava, because Rava says, Hichnis afar lechasot botzoah. Let's say a person has afar that he set aside to cover his child's waist. Now, again, that doesn't sound like a common case, right? But this is what they did. They didn't have plumbing.
Dig a hole and
you bury it. So what happens if you have a kid and the kid's toilet trained? Pre-cut toilet paper. Pre-prepared toilet earth. Okay? So you have a kid, the kid is now too young to be able to go to the outhouse. So what are you going to do in this scenario? It goes in the thing. The answer is, I have in the corner, I have earth. So if I have earth, you're allowed to cover with it dam tzipor. Dam tzipor, what if you prepared it for dam tzipor, for the bird that you're going to slaughter, you're going to go for the turducken for the meal. You're not allowed to use it to cover the tzoah. What's the reason? Because since the bird is a definite chiyuv, I know that this is my lunch. So I know I'm going to need the earth for that. So if I have the earth prepared for a sure case, I can't use it. I can't use it on a maybe. But if I have it for a maybe, I can use it for a sure. Got it? Okay. Says the Gemara, Nahar Bela Yamri. Okay, the people from Nahar Bela, they say, even if you prepared something for a sure use, like the bird that you're going to eat that day, the on Yom Tov, you're still allowed to use it for covering over a child's mistake. Right? Now, what's the reason? The Nahar Belai, they felt that when a child is going to the bathroom, that's not a maybe. 100% of the time you're going to have to use that sand. So therefore it's also a vadai. The maybe about it is that I don't know when it's going to be. I don't know how much it's going to be. I don't know what room it's going to be. Because but that a child is going to go to the bathroom is definite. So therefore Nahar Belai felt that was considered a definite. Now just by the way, what I love about these cases in the Gemara is that there's a machloket, but really, they're not arguing. What do I mean? Of course they're arguing. He says mutar, he says asur. But the mutar and asur are not essentially an argument. I just hold that this case is likely. We both agree on the premise. The whole point of this was the premise. It wasn't, right? It wasn't the situation. Yeah, it wasn't. It's the premise. But on the law itself, we both agree that if you're prepared for a maybe, you could use it for a sure. If you're prepared for a sure, you cannot use it for a maybe. We just disagree on what's a maybe.
What do you consider sure and what do you consider?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, I always love that because
turned the maybe
But they're
into
both-
sure.
but they're
He turned
both
the
sure.
No, but he turned the maybe into
The child is going to have.
No, but that's what he's saying. He's saying
Rava says,
You're going to eat the bird.
Rava says, but there's no way, I have no way of knowing when
will
it's going to
come first,
happen.
you don't know.
It's not a time, it's not set, it's not something that I have in my mind. I think it goes a little deeper than that. It's not a question of when makes it into a safek. Because let's say as an example, I said something on the side, what to do when I'm going to eat cupcakes. I didn't decide when I'm going to eat the cupcake. That's a maybe?
No.
If I'm for sure going to eat the cupcake over Yom Tov,
When, not if.
it's a when.
Not if.
No one would say that that's not set aside for Yom Tov as a sure set. So it's not that like, oh, Rava is like, I don't know when, so that's a safek. I think what Rava is saying is more than that. Since I don't know when it's going to be, in my mind, I'm not like, okay, this is for that. Because it's not set. The fact that it's not set makes it, not that it's not a for sure occurrence, it just creates a weaker setting aside. So good? Okay, therefore, says the Gemara, Amri b'ma Rava. So the Gemara says, Rava is going according to his reason that if it's a maybe, right, this case, if it's a maybe, you can't use it to cover. Now, just by the way, it sounds like from the Gemara, the guy's like, oh, Rava is going according to his way, indicating that non-Rava is not like Rava.
Right.
But Nahar Bilai would probably agree to this too.
Right.
Why? By a child going to the bathroom, it's like a sure occurrence over Yom Tov. The question is when. By the case where I told you don't slaughter, now you by mistake slaughter. That's for sure a maybe. Maybe Nahar Bilai would also agree to Rava here. That's what I would have thought. So the Va'azda Rava L'Taimeh is not coming Le'afuke, it's not coming to exclude the Nahar Bilai. I think they would agree with that too. Because they agree to the core premise that if you set something aside for a sure item, you can't then use it for a maybe. And this is a maybe. I told you don't slaughter it. I'm supposed to expect you to disobey? Yeah. Says the Gemara, Amri b'marava, we say in Eretz Israel, Pligi b'Rabbi Yossi bar Chama Reb
So
Zera.
the fact that you're not allowed, it's an automatic maybe.
Yeah,
Because you're not allowed.
I told you not to do
You did
it.
it.
The whole
You
case
know,
is where you did it,
right.
where you made a mistake, you forgot, you're a rebel.
Already a maybe.
Okay. Amri b'marava, we say in Eretz Israel, Pligi b'Rabbi Yossi bar Chama Reb Zera. Rabbi Yossi bar Chama and Reb Zera argue about this. Amri la Rava b'Reb Yosef bar Chama Reb Zera. And some people say it's Rava the son of Reb Yosef and bar Chama Reb Zera, and also the son of Yosef bar Chama Reb Zera. Okay, so these people were arguing. Chara, my one opinion says, which means that we don't know who says what. Koi harehu kitzoah. Koi, the scenario of koi is the same as tzoah, right? So when you prepared it for a maybe, you could use it for a maybe. If you prepared it for a sure, you can't use it for a maybe. V'charama, and one says koi eno ketzoah. The other opinion says no, koi is not like a tzoah. Tzoah, that's a maybe. So tzoah is more of a maybe than koi. So the machloket is between these two opinions. Do we take this case and go back to that? So we just started by saying that Rava, who says that you're not allowed to cover it with koi, he's going according to his reasoning of tzoah, which is the same as koi. Says the Gemara, you're telling me that this and this are the same. I remember that in Eretz Israel, they used to have a machloket on exactly this point. Is koi, is the maybe of koi and the maybe of tzoah, are they the same or not? One opinion says yes, and one opinion says no. Says the Gemara, what do you mean one? One sounds like you don't know who said what. Tistayim, let's work out, let's assign the one to Rava. Tistayem de Rava udamar koy areu ketzoah. Because we just told you that Rava says koy is like tzoah. Damar Rava, Rava says if a person put earth aside to cover tzoah, the sewage, you can cover the blood. Dam tzipor, if you set aside for the blood, asur lechasot botzoah. And the Gemara, this tayeb, you're 100% right. We don't have to write it down as one said, right? We don't have to say that anymore. We know exactly who the one is. Rava is the one that says that koi is like tzoah. The Gemara says, okay? Should we do this last piece? Yeah, let's do this last piece until we get to the relate. You know, it's a shame not to finish. Let's just finish. We'll try and get there quickly because I don't want to have to come back into the cheshbonot. The Gemara says, Rami Bired Rav Yeva Amar. Rami, the son of Rav Yeva, said, how come, when it comes to this animal, which is a maybe domesticated, maybe wild, we don't cover, why we just cover it? What's the issue? The answer is, we're worried, mishum hatarat chelbo. If you cover the blood, what will that tell you?
The animal is permitted to be.
That the animal is a chaya. Because what do you cover blood for? Wild animal. If it's a wild animal, what's the halakha? Halakha is that its fats are allowed to be eaten. So if I told you from a safek to cover the blood, I'm nervous that you'll be like, oh, 1 second, koi, we always cover the blood. That must mean it's a wild animal. Wild animal, let's go, have a well-marbled steak. Eat the fats that are not allowed in a behema, but are allowed in a chayah. The Gemara says, if that's the case, and that's the reason, afilu b'chol nami, then why are you telling me you don't cover the blood of a koi on Yom Tov? You should not cover the blood of a koi even during the week. Why? If you cover the blood, you're going to say, oh, it's a chaya. If you're going to say it's a chaya, then you're going to eat the fats, which is also from the Torah. Gemara answers, no. No. In the weekday, I could say, why is the guy covering it with the koi? Maybe he just wants to not have his chatzer covered in slick blood. So he's covering it with earth in order to be able to have it, which is what they did anyway for spills, back in the day. So he's cleaning his yard. Since in the chol, there's another thing that I could have said it was, therefore I'm not worried you're going to say, oh, it's for sure for that reason. But on Yom Tov, where you ordinarily would not do it because of the gizerah of maybe you're going to tamp it down or crush the clods or whatever the case might be. So, or maybe it's not prepared according to Rava, so it's muktzeh. So, therefore, you're going to say, if we didn't worry about those things, it must be it's a chaya. If it's a chaya, then you don't cover it. If it's a chaya, then you're going to eat the fats. Right. If I covered it when it's sketchy to cover, i.e. on Yom Tov, the only reason why I'm doing it is not to clean my yard. Only must be because it's really a chaya. If it's really a chaya, I'm going to learn the law that I can eat the fats. If I can eat, then that's going to be asur. Says the Gemara.
So what's the eat the fats with the chaya?
The law of what kind of animal do you have to cover the blood? Only a chaya, a wild animal,
Right.
not domesticated. What kind of animal is the fats asur? Only a behema, not a chaya. So therefore the Gemara says, I have a koi now, I don't know what it is. So it sounds like I should always cover the blood because it's a safek. Maybe yes, maybe no. So just be safe, cover the blood. Answers the Gemara, the reason why I don't cover the blood is because if you cover the blood, people will be like, oh, it's definitely a chaya. And if it's a chaya, then what will they do with the meat? They'll eat the fats. Right? Because a chaya is mutar to eat those fats.
Domesticated
So the safek, domesticated, you're not allowed to eat the fats. There's certain fats, not all fat. Certain fats, that's part of what was set aside for the korbanot.
Right.
So even on a shechita, there's certain fats that the butcher cuts out. It's not kosher. Yeah. All right? Not on top of the, no, not the sirloin, not the, no. The fat that covers this. The fat that's over there, the fat's over there, okay? We're going to get to it when we learn chulin, all right? So the Gemara says, that's only asur in a behemah. If I tell you cover it, because we want to be strict on the maybe, then you're going to be like, oh, this is a chaya, therefore I can eat the fats. And that's asur, because we don't know if it's yes or no. I'm only telling you to cover it because of the maybe. But the maybe now makes me do something else. So there's a case where being strict actually winds up making you being lenient in something else.
Right.
So the Gemara says, you know why you don't cover the koi on Yom Tov? The Gemara answers, because then you're going to say it's a chaya and you can eat the fats. The Gemara says, okay, then don't cover it in the weekday too. Answers the Gemara, no. In a weekday, I'll say, I have a reason, maybe he's cleaning up. Only on Yom Tov, where the guy would ordinarily not be allowed to do this, so it must be that we really hold it to chaya if we're letting you do sketchy items on Yom Tov in order to cover the blood, because it must be a real chiyuv. It's really a chaya. If it's really a chaya, I can eat the fats. On that the Gemara said, therefore we don't do it. Says the Gemara, shachat be'ashpa ma yilka lememar.
That's like another reason they're bringing.
Sorry?
It's another reason. Not to cover the. Not to cover the.
Not to cover it.
So the fat is the third.
Don't cover the.
The Gemara says, shachat be'ashpa ma yilka lememar. What happens if a person slaughtered the koi, okay, in an area where he don't care about cleaning up the house? He's slaughtering it on top of the garbage pile. So in that case, no one's going to be able to say, oh, he's only doing it in order to clean up his yard. So what would be the halacha if I slaughtered a koi on chol on a weekday, but there's no excuse of, oh, he's only doing it to cover his yard?
You don't cover it.
You should not cover it. The Gemara said, but we never said that.
Oh, let me say a lot of things.
Yeah? We never said that. Said the Gemara, Bali malech ma'ika lememar. Also, another question, what happens if a person comes and he asks the halacha, I have a koi, I'm slaughtering the koi, do I cover it on an ordinary day? So in that case, right, even just telling him the halacha is going to result in the guy thinking that koi,
He can cover it on a holiday.
he can eat the fats. Let's say a guy comes and he says, do I have to cover the blood of a koi? The answer is yes. Right. Just telling him yes is going to make him eat the fats.
Right.
So the Gemara says it can't be. So your suggestion of we're worried that you might learn chaya to chaya laws is not accepted. Ela b'chol, you know why in the weekday we don't we're not worried about you covering the koi and we say that you have to? Says the Gemara, Ela b'chol misapka. On the chol during the week, right? We're not sure. Since we're not sure what it is, the rabbis told you, cover it in the weekday. Why not? Because why not?
Right.
However, b'yom tov, Gemara says, no, it's not about what the guy would think. Oh, on the chol, on the weekday, I covered it, so therefore it must... No. It's the strength of the proof that's bothering us. In the chol, I'm not going to learn the laws of chaya from it, because maybe the rabbis are not sure, and they just told me to cover it, because why not? But if on Yom Tov they told me to cover it, it must be that it's for sure chaya. So the only gizerah that we made of you might think that I could eat the fats is when you have a very strong case for it being a chaya. Not when you have a maybe. The maybe is not because of the dirt on the ground. Maybe he's doing it for the purpose of cleaning up. Because then if it was in the garbage, it would not be the case. Or then if he came to ask us, that would not be the case. But when the person does it on Yom Tov, where you see the rabbis went and they let you do something that they would not normally let you do on Yom Tov, the rabbis must be very sure that it's a chaya. In that case, I could rely on that and eat the fats, which is incorrect halacha. If they were unsure, would they have done that? The Gemara says, Tani Reb Zera, we learned from Reb Zera, Lo koi bilvad ameru, not only koi, did we say that you don't cover on Yom Tov. If a person slaughtered behema chayav off, I went nuts. I'm going for the turducken item, okay? So I went to behema, domesticated, chaya, non-domesticated, off bird. Of those, which do you have to cover? Chaya and bird. Off, not behema. But the bloods are now mixed, this one with this one. Asur lechasoto b'yom tov. You can't cover them on Yom Tov. Wow. What would be the reasoning?
Is the doubt.
Yeah, but I have a chiyuv here. What's the reasoning? Why would you not be able to do it? Okay, this is the Gemara. Look at this. Rashi says, explains the answer. Lo koi bilvad amiru de'en mechasin. See 3 lines from the bottom in the wide. Not only koi did we say you're not covering on Yom Tov. De'en mechasim Yom Tov. The dinhu shelo yichasu shema behemahu, because maybe it's a animal, a domesticated, and it's not hayav. V'tarach tircha delo mitzvah, and therefore you did work on Yom Tov, which is not a mitzvah. Ve'afilu be'efer akira, even if it's talking about on the efer kira, because you made a hole in the efer kira. El afilu shachat di'ikachad deta'un kisui. You have one that requires kisui. Afilu hachi en mechasin, you still don't cover mishum dekar tarach nami bishel behema, because you covered also, you worked also for the third one, the behema, which is not chayav. Amar Rabbi Yossi bar Yosina, Rabbi Yossi bar Yasinia said, Lo shanu, when did we say that when it's commingled you don't cover? Ela she'en yachol lechasoto b'dkira achat. When I can't cover all of these tri-blood fecta with one dig of the spade. Ava yachol lechasoto b'dkira achat mutar. If I could cover all of it with one dig, no problem. The only reason when I told you don't cover it at all, when you have all 3, is if I'm going to need to do a second dig only because there's behemah. So the extra melacha is going to be for the behemah. I don't know which is which. So we didn't allow you to cover it at all, because granted, one of the digs was mutar, the second dig, not mutar. But if you could cover them all with one dig, give you an example. The guy has a mahusiv shovel. Or the guy has a little tiny gardening shovel. Okay? Says the Gemara, Pshita. What do you mean? Of course. If you could do one, you have to do one. You can't do 2. Isn't that the case anyway? I thought, right? If I'm able to cover it with 1, you can't do 2, right? That's true anyway. Yeah? Gemara answers, Nigzor dikira achat atush dikirot. We're gonna throw a decree, a gezerah on you, that when you could cover a blood with 2, right? We don't want you covering with 2. So therefore, if you cover it with 1, maybe I should tell you can't even cover it with 1, because in a case where you'll need 2, you're going to do 2. The Gemara says, Kamash Malan, we're not worried about such a gezerah. Okay? And says the Gemara, Amar Rabba says, Shachat tzipor me'erev Yom Tov. If a person did a shechita on Erev Yom Tov, okay? En mechasin oto Yom Tov. You can't cover it on Yom Tov. Okay? En mechasin oto Yom Tov. Look at the bottom line in Rashi. You should have covered it before, during the daytime. Right? And the reason of Simchat Yom Tov doesn't help you, because I can eat the bird even if I didn't cover it. So if I slaughtered a bird before Yom Tov, and when should I have covered it? Before Yom Tov. Now that Yom Tov comes along, I can't cover it and say, oh, it's a mitzvah to cover, and I have Simchat Yom Tov. Because number 1, you should have covered it before. Number 2, you can have Simchat Yom Tov anyway. Says the Gemara, Gilgel Isa Be'erev Yom Tov. Let's say a person made the dough on Erev Yom Tov. You're allowed to separate challah even on Yom Tov. Now, technically, why should you be allowed to do that? You should be able to, because, right, why should you be able to separate it on Yom Tov? You should have done it before, right? Says the Gemara, says Rashi, top line, we said later on in the Masechet that on Yom Tov you're not allowed to take off Trumot and Masrot. This is like Truma, taking off the portion of Challah. Since you could have separated before Yom Tov, you're not allowed to do it on Yom Tov. Afilu hachi mifresh. We still say that you're able to separate on Yom Tov. Why? We never made the gezerah on separating of dough. Since I'm allowed to make it on Yom Tov, and I could bake it in order to have warm bread. So if I allowed you to make it on Yom Tov and separate on Yom Tov, then I could, if I did it before, I could also do it on Yom Tov. Because I allowed you to do the whole thing on Yom Tov. And we never made a gezerah on that one thing. Gemara says, Shmuel says on this, I feel Gigalisa Merev Yom Tov and Mafrish Mimera Chalatav Yom Tov. No, he learned that that's not the case. You're not allowed to separate the challah and Yom Tov, because even though we allowed you to do it for warm, fresh bread, that's only when you made it on Yom Tov. But if I made it before, and I should have separated before, I can't now come and break Yom Tov.
You had the option of doing it
Yeah,
before.
exactly. And it wouldn't have made a difference. And it
You
wouldn't have
could have done
made
it before. You could have done it
and it wouldn't have made a qualitative difference to the food.
item.
Right.
So therefore,
Says the Gemara, Lema pliga de Shmuel, adavu de Shmuel. Turns out that the whole thing over here, who do we say the name of? Amar Rabba. Then you say Avu de Shmuel. Are we saying that Shmuel is arguing his own father? Dama Shmuel says salacious over here. For says Shmuel, chalat chutz la'aretz. If a person has chala and chutz la'aretz, ochel veholech ve'achar kach mafrish. The person's able to eat from the bread, and then after he ate from the bread, separate it later. Okay? So since that's the case, that means that I'm allowed to eat the bread even without separating chala. Right? So therefore, it doesn't make sense that it would be asur to separate the challah and Yom Tov. Why? Because I can eat the bread and not have to worry about the separation of the challah.
What do you mean?
Shmuel is saying that if I have challah, same thing. Let's say I have dough that I turned into bread. Halakha is I have to separate challah. Shmuel says, it's true I have to separate challah. But I'm allowed, on chalat chutz la'aretz, it's not in Israel, I'm allowed to eat now the bread. And then when I get to the end, that whatever remaining, that's going to be challah. I don't have to separate it before eating it. I can eat it and then separate it. Yeah?
So you're taking the bread and using it for challah.
You're eating 90% of it, and the last 10 is the separation.
Right.
Okay, and what's the reason for that? Right? Because it's from the challah of chutz la'aretz. It's not as strict as the challah of here. Look at Rashi. Ochel veholech kol hapat. He can eat the whole pot. He can eat all the bread. Umishayer kedei challah, and he can leave over the last piece, which is enough for the amount of challah. Mafrisha be'achrona, and then he sets it aside at the end. Alma hafrashata shelo letzorechi. Separating challah is needless. V'lo havya hafrasha, and it's not considered hafrasha. V'mafrish b'yom tov eno kemitaken. So therefore, if I separate it on Yom Tov, it's not like I fixed anything. Dilitza that it should be asur kasher kishahag ba'teruma digazur barabanam neshur nira kemitaken. Why do we say it's asur to do challah, to separate on the holiday? The only reason why we said it's asur is because you're fixing the item. So in other words, let's say I have something that I have to separate to Terumot Masrot. I can't eat it until I take it to Maser. When I take Maser, I made something usable that wasn't usable. Okay. So the Gemara says, if that's the case, then in that case, you're not allowed to do that on Yom Tov. You fixed something on Yom Tov.
Change the item.
Says Shmuel, the Gemara, 1 second. Chalat chutz la'aretz, if I eat the challah, I'm allowed to eat it. We never said that it was asur because it's less strict than Terumah Maaser. Which means that I can eat the challah, and then whatever's left at the end, that's going to be Maaser. So therefore, separating the Maaser doesn't fix it, which would mean that you should never have any issue whatsoever about separating, even if you made it before Yom Tov, because you didn't do anything. Amar Rava, Milo modeh Shmuel shem kara alei Hashem. Does Shmuel not agree that if you called the challah something, she'asura lezarim, that it now becomes asur for a person who is not a kohen to be able to eat it? So even though, even though it's not necessary to make it usable, it's enough like terumah that we would still say it's asur. So therefore, Shmuel is not in contradistinction to his father, because even though it's not necessary to do, since its designation makes it only usable for Kohanim, that's enough like the action of terumah that we said it's asur on Yom Tov. So therefore, Shmuel and his father are not in disagreement. If you made it before Yom Tov, you can't separate it on Yom Tov. Baruch Hanai Le'olam. Amen.
You don't have to leave the best parts of the maaser or some of the choicest part. In this case, you don't have to.
Even if you're supposed to, it doesn't mean that if you didn't do that, that it's not maaser.
Right, of course.
Okay? Hazaku Baruch.
What's the